Here with a new week, and this week we are experimenting with a deck which is nowhere near as strong as best of the best. This is a Mardu, a deck. I quite like that name, I was pretty proud of it. But yeah, this is my Mardu deck, and yeah, as you can probably tell, it's using the new Mardu guy. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, by the way, so if I'm butchering it, just deal with it and let me know in the comments. But yeah, this deck is not the strongest thing I've ever played with, and but it is fun. It has pulled out some pretty satisfying wins. And yeah, without further ado, let's delve into the cards. Probably already shaking your head, but we are running 3 Loyal Pegasus. I actually really like this guy. I mean, I got beat down by him once, I think a couple times. Like a limited number of times, this card just absolutely destroyed me, and I thought, well, time to spread the pain. And this guy isn't actually that bad in this deck. You've got a lot. You generally have a lot of creatures attacking it. If you're not attacking in every turn, you're in trouble anyway. So yeah, I mean, the blocking thing is kind of irrelevant. You rarely want to block it with a 2/1. But you know, Loyal Pegasus is pretty solid. I like it. It can get a lot of damage through in the air. Well, they can't really do much about it. So that's why I run. I recently just took out one of them. I did run all 4, but I took out one of them for the land because obviously it does have a little bit of unreliability about it. But I do really like this card. So yeah. Next we run. This is our removal. We run Reprisal because anything that has more than 4 power is pretty much going to beat us down, so we need all 3 of them. And this is just pretty much the best white removal. You could argue that Angelic Edict is better, and I would agree, but this thing is 3 mana cheaper plus its instant speed. So in an aggro deck it is just generally a lot better. Next we needed a lot of reliability in this deck, because with 3 colours, and they're not even the strongest colours for an aggro deck, and there was a lot of just dead turns in there. When you need reliability, there's no better card than Squadron Hawk. This thing is just amazing. It gets you 3 of its. So you can get all 4 of them out if you have one in your hand. If you have one of these in your hand, you have 4 Squadron Hawks in your hand basically if you want. And yeah, it's really good. Just gets damage in through the air, can really pressure your opponents, and it just like I said, it just gives you that consistency that this deck lacked before I added this in. Next, as it's a white aggro deck, you'd be surprised if we didn't see Brimaz. The double white really isn't an issue in this deck, and yeah, just I mean, Brimaz is Brimaz. I mean, there's barely been a white deck which this guy isn't involved in. The reason is because he's amazing, and yeah, not really much explain needed behind that card. So let's just move on. Next, we needed a lot of card draw, and as this is an aggro deck, what better card draw than Mentor of the Meek? Really like this guy. I mean, he's body by himself, but more importantly, all my creatures so far benefit off this guy. I mean, I'm starting on my words today, I apologise for that, but Loyal Pegasus is really good with this guy because it only costs 1 mana for a 2/1 in the air, which draws you a card as well. So yeah, I mean, this guy is pretty solid, and yeah, he's half my card draw, and basically I'm always happy to see this guy in my hand because I know I can usually dig myself out of any situation. Next we move on to the white bomb, which surprisingly, I'm sure it shocks everyone, is Baneslayer, because Baneslayer is a terrible card and no one should run it. No, Baneslayer is just Baneslayer, really nothing to say. I always say just like, there's literally nothing in this card that I don't want it to say. Double white, not an issue at 5 mana, so yeah, Baneslayer, use it. Next we move on to black, where we run 2 Tormented Heroes. I felt I needed a couple more 1-drops to really get some aggro out early game, and this guy is pretty much the best it's going to get on black aggro for very early on. I mean, he's a 2/1 for 1, which is pretty good. Anyone in the Taft isn't really relevant. You're not going to be blocking with this guy, and the heroic is pretty irrelevant as well, but I just put him in because he's a 2/1 for 1, and I needed a couple more early game pressure on my opponent, so I thought he'd do the job. Next we run Brain Maggot, and I love Brain Maggot in this deck because basically this card says steal anger of the gods. It says steal anger of the gods, or steal any cards that really slow me down, and I really like that in this deck. And it also lets me know when I can. It's like this lets you know your entire opponent's hand, so you can react to, like, if you see they've got a bunch of removal, you don't overextend. I mean, if you see they've got a board wipe, you just don't play all your cards out. Obviously, force them a board wipe before you start playing your stuff out. And I mean, sure, they get the thing back, but then they have to waste like a shock. That's like best case scenario for them. They have to shock a 1/1, which is really their own doing. They want to be shocking like my Mentor of the Meeks and stuff like that. So yeah, it eats removal, and steals removal. That's why Brain Maggot is in this deck. Next we move on to the other half of the card draw, which is Graveborn Muse. This guy is basically here, I mean, I don't think I've run any other zombies, but this is just here to draw an extra card a turn. He's a 3/3 body as well, or she actually. And yeah, sorry, excuse me. Sorry about that, I just sneezed. I'm sure you didn't want to hear that, but yeah, so she basically draws you an extra card a turn, you lose 1 life. Really not an issue. I mean, I don't have any life gain in this deck, so that can potentially be a problem. But if you haven't won by the time she starts really hurting, you're in trouble. So yeah, she's sort of to help like finish your opponent off sort of thing, and not she's not there to just last long and endure the game out. She's there to help finish the game. And the 3/3 body is kind of underrated. I mean, you can just attack him with this guy. They kind of have to block him eventually if you keep just pinging them with this thing. So even if you are getting low on life, you can force them to take it down and maybe take a couple of creatures with it. So that's why I like Graveborn. Next we move on to the Black Bomb, which is Indulgent Tormentor. Really, for a while I was torn up between this and obviously Sheoldred and Runescarred Demon, but I very rarely find myself getting to like 7 mana in this deck. So I decided to just go with what I know, which is Indulgent Tormentor. This guy is pretty solid. He's flying in the air, so he can really hurt your opponent in the air. If you know they don't have a removal with Brain Maggot, you know he's pretty safe, and his ability is pretty solid as well. Forcing them to either sack a creature, lose 3 life, or draw you a card. Either which you're happy with in this deck. Sack a creature that can't jump block, life gain. I mean, life loss is always nice when you an aggro deck, and drawing cards is pretty much the deadliest thing of all. So yeah, really happy we run both of them. Next we move on to red, where we run 3 shocks. Honestly, this card is in here to beat aura decks and to beat like early game aggression, and that's why it's in here. It's shock. It's 1 mana, 2 damage to target creature. I'm really happy to see this in my hand, because I know that for the first couple turns they can play nothing, which I'm scared of. Talrans are really not an issue, stuff like that. But one thing I have learned with this deck, you have to use it right. I think one time I got angry and I shocked Goblin Rabblemaster, and then the next turn they played a Talrand, and I was obviously Reprisal doesn't work on it, so yeah, that wasn't a good game. Suddenly my flying damage really didn't mean much. You've got to shock correctly, but it's a pretty solid card. Next we run on to Rabblemaster, because it's an aggro deck. There's with red in it, and I don't think there's any red aggro deck which doesn't run this card, even in like Paper Magic as well, because this thing is just nuts. I mean, if they have no creatures on the field, you're hitting them for like four just from this guy, and then like a bunch from your tokens, and that's not excluding all the other creatures. This guy needs to be responded to. And a little common thing which I noticed is that if like an opponent pulls out a Baneslayer after this guy, just sacrifice this guy, because I mean, them gaining 5 life a turn is not worth you still having a Rabblemaster in the field. He's basically useless at that point. But hopefully he'd have a Reprisal in hand, and then he continues to still win with Rabblemaster. But yeah, I love this card. It's in here. Next we run an interesting card. It was Trumpet Blast, and quite a funny story behind this card is because for some reason I thought when I started planning this deck, I remembered the card. I didn't actually look at the colours or anything, and I thought Mardu was had green and white in it. So like for some reason I thought green was in for like black, I think, or something like that. And yeah, so I was gonna run Sigil Blessing in its place, and then I saw that there was no green. Felt pretty disappointed, so I thought, right, I'm gonna have to run a bad card like Inspired Charge. And then I remember that Trumpet Blast exists, so Trumpet Blast is in here. Trumpet Blast has won me. I think I remember there was one game I was kind of on the back, but my aggression was running out. He just attacked all in. I was down to about 5, and then I only had one Trumpet Blast in hand, which could only hit him for like 10, and he was on 15, and then top deck the other one, won the game, and he wasn't happy, and I don't blame him. This card's amazing. It helps you just finish off your opponent, and a lot of your damage is unblockable in the air and stuff like that, so it really hurts your opponents quite badly. And yeah, I mean, you can even put a lot of pressure on, even if it can't kill them. If you take them down like 3, they can't attack in anymore and stuff like that. So I like this card in this deck, and I love it. Really, that's not much else to say. Next we run Ogre Battledriver. Ogre Battledriver is really good in this deck. It's given, I mean, not too many creatures have haste, but cards like Loyal Pegasus really like this guy because if you give something haste, you can attack in with that creature and Loyal Pegasus, or if you're attacking anyway, Loyal Pegasus gets haste, stuff like that. So I mean, not even just Loyal Pegasus, as any creature you play. I mean, if you cast this guy, then the next one you cast 2 Squadron Hawks, that's 6 damage in the air. So that's that. This guy, I haven't actually drawn him much yet, but I know he's going to be a good addition when he does hit the field. So I'm not too upset about seeing this guy in my deck, but I'd love to see him more now. Hopefully we get to see him more over the next week. Next we're on our red bomb Stormbreath Dragon. This guy is in here because he's 5/5 mana, so he's cheaper than Inferno Titan. He's got haste, which is better in an aggro deck. Protection for white. Kind of negates a lot of removal, like Reprisals and Angelic Edicts. And then obviously the flying means you can finish off this opponent, which is really nice. Monstrosity is pretty much irrelevant in this deck, but if you do get up to 7 mana, it is an option. But I really don't think you'll see me getting much up to 7 mana in this deck. Next we move on to our multicolored cards, and then this pretty much the flagship of the deck is the Mardu Roughraider. This guy costs 5 for a 5/4, which isn't initially great, but his ability I really like. I think it's got a lot of potential there. Whenever he attacks, target creature can't block this turn. So I mean, if they've got like a Gargoyle Mazor, or even like just a really big creature like a Baneslayer, you don't have removal, play this guy, swing it next turn, you can just keep... Baneslayer's basically useless unless it's attacking in, which is really good. And obviously if you play this guy after an Ogre Battledriver, they're in trouble because you've got a 7/4 coming across the field, which taps down one of their blockers, and that's excluding what else you play. I mean, I think of the new guys, I like this guy the best. I mean, Sultai guy is definitely the best, but I think this guy's got potential, so I'm going to see how he does. And hopefully he doesn't disappoint this week. And then finally, to cut off the aggro, we run a Truefire Paladin. This guy is really, really good. I mean, this guy just messes with your opponent's mind so much, because I mean, the block and try and force you down, force you to tap mana, or maybe you had nothing else planned that turn, maybe you did. So it's just like, most of the time your opponent just goes, right, I'm not even going to bother blocking this thing, because they can just pump it twice, make it a 4/2 first strike or something like that. Like, it's really not worth the damage. But then think, well, hang on, if I take 4 damage a turn, I'm really in trouble, and he might not have anything else going on, so I might have to just kill this guy. So yeah, it just really messes with your opponent's mind. I like this guy. Rarely do I actually need to activate his ability. Most of the time they just go, right, this guy's basically unblockable to me, I don't care. But yeah, I love this guy, and really happy to see him in my deck. And that's the main bulk of the deck. And let's move on to lands. And basically I'll go on to the gates first. We run 3 Nomad Outposts because it covers all our mana. We run 2 Rakdos because red and black are kind of secondary colours, white is more important. And then we run 3 Boros because it's red and white, and then 3 Orzov because, yeah, again, it's black and white, so I mean white, anything that links with white gets 1 extra mana basically. And then we move on to basic. This is really simple. I mean, before I had 4/4/3, but as I added extra land, it's made it 4/4/4. And we have 4 mountains, 4 swamps, and 4 plains. See, I mean, like I said, this deck isn't as strong as 5 colour, as you'd probably guess as soon as you saw this card, but I do like it, and hopefully you can really pull out some nice wins. It wasn't actually too hard to make this deck. Normally I sweat and strain over a lot of have like 90 cards, but I trimmed this card deck down pretty bad. I mean, only thing I really regret not having is cards like a couple of the auras I'd like, and apart from that, I mean, looking through, I mean, maybe some tokens, but I think white there wasn't really much I missed. So yeah, I mean, I would like some more Angelic Edicts, but you know, I think 6 removal spells, basically 3 for early game guys and 3 for late game guys is enough in this deck. So yeah, I mean, that's really all I've got to say. I mean, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but a full deck list for this will be in the description. I probably should have said that at the start actually. So if anything, I've just pissed anyone off who didn't want to listen to me all day. And but yeah, the full deck list is in the description. So if you want to check that out, if you've got any comments or suggestions on cards that you think should be added, do let me know, because I mean, this deck definitely isn't the finished article. I'm just flashing through now to see if I can see anything, but as we're not running blue, I doubt we'll find anything useful yet. But yeah, I mean, I'll just cut and end there. I like some Undying Evils as well, but you know, you can't choose. But yeah, so thanks for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow.